The dare that changed my life. I've always been the kind of person who laughs in the face of fear. Horror movies never bothered me. Ghost stories were just entertainment, and when people spoke of haunted places, I thought it was all superstition. That confidence, or maybe arrogance, was what pushed me into the one experience I can never forget. The night I stepped into the old mansion at the edge of town, it all started as a dare. My friends and I were sitting around a bonfire late one chilly evening. The flames cracked, the smell of smoke lingered in the air, and the conversation shifted from school to scary local legends. That's when someone brought up the mansion. They said it had been abandoned for decades, ever since the family who lived there vanished without explanation. Some people whispered about strange screams at night. Others claimed to see flickering lights in the windows, though the place had no electricity. For years, locals avoided even walking past it after dark. Naturally, I laughed. "Come on, guys. It's just an old building," I said, tossing another stick into the fire. But then one of my friends smirked and leaned in closer. "If you're so brave, why don't you prove it? Spend just one night in the mansion." The group erupted in laughter and cheers. At first I wanted to brush it off, but their mocking smiles and taunts fueled my pride. I couldn't back down, so I said the words that sealed my fate. "Fine, I'll do it." They thought I was bluffing, but I wasn't. Something inside me, part pride, part curiosity, wanted to face that so-called haunted house and prove everyone wrong. The very next night, I prepared myself. I grabbed a flashlight, a bottle of water, and my phone. No weapons, no charms, no crosses, because in my mind, I didn't need them. I wasn't stepping into danger, I was stepping into a joke, or so I believed. The mansion was about a 20-minute walk from my house. I remember every second of that walk. The further I went, the quieter the world became. The usual sounds of the night dogs barking, insects humming faded away. By the time I reached the overgrown driveway of the mansion, silence surrounded me like a thick fog. The house loomed ahead, enormous and rotting. Its tall windows were shattered, the roof sagged in places, and weeds crawled up its walls like veins on a corpse. For the first time, a small chill ran down my spine. I told myself it was just the cold air. Pushing open the rusted iron gate, I stepped inside the property. The crunch of gravel under my shoes sounded unnaturally loud in the stillness. My flashlight beam cut through the darkness, landing on the front door. The wood was cracked, the paint long peeled away. As I reached out to push it open, something strange happened. My hand froze mid-air. I don't know why. It wasn't locked, it wasn't heavy, but something inside me resisted, like a quiet voice warning me not to go further. I ignored it. The door creaked open with a long, painful groan. The smell hit me first: mold, dampness, and something else. Something metallic, like rust or blood. I stepped inside. The air was colder, heavier, as if the house itself exhaled around me. My flashlight beam revealed the grand entry hall. Once it must have been beautiful, with tall staircases, chandeliers, and carved wooden railings. But now it was broken and decayed, a shell of its former self. Dust danced in the beam of my light, and every step I took echoed unnaturally, as though the house was listening. At that moment, I told myself I would just take a quick walk around, record a few videos for proof, and leave. But deep inside, I already sensed something wasn't right. It wasn't just an abandoned mansion. It felt alive. And as I stood in that dark, rotting hall, I couldn't shake the feeling that I wasn't the one exploring the house. The house was exploring me. That was only the beginning of the night that would change my life forever. Stepping into the forgotten mansion, the moment I crossed the threshold, I felt it. A strange heaviness, as if the air inside the mansion was thicker than the night air outside. My flashlight flickered, even though the batteries were brand new. I tapped it, forcing the beam to steady, and tried to convince myself it was nothing more than coincidence. But deep down, I already knew this was no coincidence. The main hall stretched before me, grand and terrifying in its decay. Torn curtains dangled from broken windows. A dusty chandelier hung above, swaying ever so slightly, though there was no breeze.
Ow.
The staircase rose in the center, its steps cracked and groaning under their own weight. I whispered to myself, just an old house. That's all. But my voice sounded wrong in there. Too loud, too sharp. It bounced off the walls in a way that didn't sound like an echo. It sounded like something repeating my words back. Just a half second late, I swallowed hard and pressed forward. The floorboards creaked beneath my shoes. Every step made me feel like I was intruding. My flashlight beam landed on the faded wallpaper, once elegant, now peeling to reveal the cracked plaster underneath. I moved toward a door on the left side of the hall. It opened into what must have once been a living room. The smell hit me again, mold, and that faint metallic temps I couldn't explain. The furniture was still there. A couch with stuffing spilling out. An armchair collapsed to one side, and a fireplace filled with ash long gone cold. But what caught my eye was the mirror. It stood above the fireplace, cracked down the center, the glass fogged with age. Lifted my flashlight and aimed it at my reflection. For a moment I saw only myself, pale, nervous, but still smirking at the ridiculousness of it all. And then something moved. Behind me, I spun around instantly. The beam of my flashlight slicing through the room. Nothing, just broken furniture and dust. I turned back to the mirror. My reflection stared back at me, but it didn't move exactly when I did. It was a split second off, like a bad video feed. I stepped closer, my heart hammering. My breath fogged up the glass, and for a brief second, I swear I saw another face in the reflection. Not mine. A pale, hollow-eyed face watching me from over my shoulder. I stumbled back so fast I nearly tripped over the armchair. My flashlight shook in my hands as I scanned the room again. Still nothing. The house was empty, or so it appeared. I wanted to leave right then, run back out the door and laugh it off as a trick of the light, but pride chained me in place. My friends were expecting proof, and if I came back with nothing, I'd never live it down. So I forced myself onward. Leaving the living room, I moved deeper into the mansion. The silence pressed in heavier with each step. It wasn't the natural quiet of an abandoned house. It was intentional. As though something in the walls was listening to me, waiting for me to make the next move. I entered what looked like a dining room. The long table still stood, draped in a stained, moth-eaten cloth. Chairs surrounded it, some tipped over, others upright like they were waiting for guests who never came. That's when I heard it. A sound. Not loud, not obvious, but clear enough to make my blood run cold. It was the faint scrape of a chair sliding across the floor. I froze, shining my flashlight over the table. Every chair was still, except one. It had moved just slightly, its legs dragging across the dusty wooden floor, leaving a fresh mark where dust had been cleared. I didn't breathe. I didn't move. I just stood there, watching, waiting. And then slowly, deliberately, the chair pushed itself back, as though inviting someone to sit down. That was the first time I whispered to myself, I shouldn't be here. But by then, it was already too late. Because whatever lived in that mansion knew I had come. And it wasn't going to let me leave so icily. The cold silence that spoke louder than words. I stood frozen in that dining room, staring at the chair that had moved by itself. My flashlight trembled in my grip, the beam bouncing across the walls, catching the faded wallpaper and shattered glass. My heart hammered so loudly in my chest. I was sure it was the only sound in the house. And then, I realized it was. The silence wasn't normal. When you're outside, even in the dead of night, there's always something, a rustle of leaves, a dog barking, the hum of insects. But in that house, there was nothing. Nothing at all. It was as if the world outside had stopped existing the moment I walked through that door. That's when it hit me. The silence wasn't empty. It was full. Full of something listening, watching, waiting. I swallowed hard and whispered to myself, just the wind. It's just the wind. But even as I said it, I knew I was lying. I backed away from the dining room table, careful not to take my eyes off the chair. My footsteps sounded thunderous, like every board I stepped on was shouting out my presence. I reached the hall again and turned toward the staircase. The flashlight flickered. Not now, I muttered, smacking the side of it. The beam steadied, but weaker, dimmer, as though the darkness itself was feeding on its light. I glanced up the staircase. The second floor yawned into shadow. My gut screamed at me not to go up there, but another part of me, the part still fueled by pride and stubbornness, pushed me forward. Halfway up, the air changed. It was subtle at first, a shift I could feel against my skin. The coldness sank deeper, not the chill of weather, but something that cut through me like icy fingers trailing over my neck. I paused, gripping the railing, listening. That's when I heard it. A whisper. So faint, I almost thought it was my imagination. Single word, dragged out, spoken with breath that wasn't mine. Leave. The sound froze me in place. My legs shook. My throat went dry. I wanted to believe it was just the old wood settling, or the wind whistling through cracks. But no. I knew what I heard. And where Sai knew it was meant for me. I turned slowly, shining my flashlight behind me. Nothing. Only the empty hall below. But when I turned back toward the staircase, I felt it. I couldn't see them, not clearly, just the faintest outline, a darker shape in the already dark hallway at the top of the stairs. My breath caught in my chest. My mind screamed at me to run, but my body refused to move. Then, as suddenly as it appeared, the shadow was gone. I sucked in a shaky breath, forcing my legs to move again. Step after creaking step, I climbed until I reached the top floor. The corridor stretched out in both directions, lined with closed doors. The wallpaper up here was even worse, peeling in long strips, revealing blackened wood beneath. My flashlight flicked over each door, my ears straining for the faintest sound. For a moment, there was nothing. No whispers, no shadows. Just me and that heavy silence pressing down. And then I heard it again. Not a whisper this time. Not a voice. Slow, deliberate knock. 3 knocks. From one of the rooms ahead. My knees nearly gave out. I gripped the flashlight so tight my knuckles turned white. Every instinct screamed at me to get out, to run down those stairs and never look back. But I didn't. I don't know why. Pride, stupidity, curiosity, whatever it was. It made me take a single step forward, then another. The knocking had stopped, but the memory of it echoed in my bones. I reached the door I thought it came from. My hand hovered over the handle, shaking, sweating. And then, before I could touch it, the silence shattered. From behind the door came the sound of something dragging, heavy, slow, like nails scraping across wood. And that was the moment I realized. The mansion wasn't just haunted. It knew I was there. And it wasn't whispering anymore. It was answering me. Shadows that moved on their own. I stood frozen in that hallway, staring at the door where the dragging sound came from. My throat tightened, my breath shallow. Every instinct in my body screamed to run, but my legs refused to obey. It was as if the mansion itself was holding me in place, daring me to open that door. With trembling hands, I reached for the handle. It was icy cold, so cold that it burned my skin. For a moment, I thought about yanking my hand back. But before I could, the dragging stopped. Silence. That silence again, heavy. Watching alive. I slowly turned the handle and pushed the door open, my flashlight beam cutting into the darkness. It was a bedroom. Or at least, it had been once. A massive bed stood against the far wall, its mattress torn open, springs jutting out like broken bones. Curtains were moth-eaten rags hanging from the windows. A wardrobe leaned in the corner, its door slightly ajar. And then my flashlight landed on the wall. Shadows, but not mine. They crawled across the cracked wallpaper, long, thin figures moving independently of the light. My flashlight shook in my hand, but the shadows didn't mimic me. They twisted, stretched, and swayed as though they were alive. I whispered, "No, this isn't real." But one of the shadows turned. It turned its head, if you could call it a head, toward me. And though it had no face, I felt its gaze pierce straight into me. My chest tightened, my breath caught, and an icy shiver spread through my veins. The shadows began to move toward me. Slowly, steadily, their elongated forms crawling along the walls and floor, spilling closer with each second. I stumbled back, bumping into the bed frame. My flashlight flickered, the beam weakening, dimming. "Not now," I hissed, smacking it desperately. When the light steadied, the shadows froze. They stopped moving entirely, like they had been caught in the act. My heart pounded so hard, I thought it would tear through my chest. I didn't dare move. I didn't dare breathe. Then the wardrobe creaked. The door, already ajar, swung open just a little more, inch by inch. The sound was excruciating, like nails dragging down glass, and from the darkness inside, something shifted. I raised my flashlight, and for a split second, I saw them two glowing eyes staring out from the wardrobe's depths. Not human eyes. Wow. Too large, too pale, too hollow. The second my light hit them, the wardrobe slammed shut with a violent crack. That broke me. I bolted from the room, my footsteps echoing down the hall as I sprinted back toward the staircase. But as I turned the corner, I froze in horror. The shadows were no longer confined to that room. They were everywhere, crawling up the walls, slithering across the ceiling, twisting, writhing, reaching. The faint shapes of arms stretched out from the darkness, brushing against me as I stumbled past. The air grew colder, heavier, suffocating me as I gasped for breath. I nearly fell down the stairs in my desperate rush. My flashlight slipped from my hand, clattering down the steps. In the instant the beam rolled across the hall, I saw them. Figures, dozens of them. Standing at the bottom of the staircase, pale, translucent bodies, their faces blurred as though half remembered in a nightmare. They didn't move. They just stood there, waiting. I froze, paralyzed by terror. My flashlight lay at their feet, its beam casting their long shadows up the walls. And those shadows, they weren't still. They writhed and twisted, moving in ways the figures themselves did not. I realized in that moment that the shadows weren't simply tricks of the light. They were alive, and they were reaching for me. Escaping the mansion but never truly free, I tore through the hallways, my flashlight beam bouncing wildly, my breath ragged and shallow. The house seemed alive around me, walls stretching, corridors twisting, doors slamming shut just as I reached them. No matter where I turned, the mansion fought to keep me inside. Behind me, I heard her, the woman, the spirit. Her shrieks echoed through the halls, shaking the very walls. Sometimes it was her voice, sharp and piercing. Other times it was the little girl's laugh, soft and mocking. The sound chased me, wrapped around me, filling every corner of my skull. Stay. Stay. I stumbled down the staircase, nearly tripping as the wood groaned beneath me. My flashlight flickered, but I didn't care anymore. I just needed to get out. At the bottom, I saw it. The front door. The way out. My heart surged with hope. I sprinted toward it, every muscle screaming. My fingers brushed the handle, and I yanked it with everything I had. It didn't move. I pulled harder, slamming my shoulder into the wood. The door rattled, but held firm as though nailed shut from the outside. No, I screamed, pounding on it. My fists thudded against the wood, desperate, frantic. Let me out. The house answered. The chandelier above the hall swayed violently, its rusted chain creaking. Dust poured down, and the portraits along the walls trembled, as though something inside them was trying to break free. I turned back, and there she was. The spirit stood at the base of the staircase, her gown dragging across the floor, her mouth twisted into a grotesque grin. Her voice slithered into the air, soft and certain. You belong to me now. The shadows around her stretched, long fingers crawling across the walls and ceiling, reaching for me. In that moment, I did the only thing I could think of. I dropped to my knees, shoved my flashlight under the door, and aimed it outward. For a split second, a crack of light broke through. Moonlight. Real moonlight. I pressed my face against the gap, the cold air rushing in, sharp and fresh, cutting through the suffocating stench of the house. That glimpse of the outside world ignited something in me, strength I didn't know I still had. With a primal scream, I slammed my entire body into the door. Once, twice. The wood groaned, splintering. On the third hit, the door burst open, throwing me out onto the front steps. I landed hard, scraping my hands and knees, but I didn't care. I was out. I staggered to my feet, sprinting across the overgrown yard, past the iron gate, into the cool night air. The mansion loomed behind me, its windows glowing faintly, like 100 eyes watching me flee. I didn't stop running until I reached the main road. Only then did I collapse, gasping, my whole body trembling. My phone buzzed and my pocket was nearly dawn. Somehow, the night had passed. I told myself it was over, that I had escaped. But I was wrong, because ever since that night, I haven't been the same. At first, it was little things. The feeling of being watched even in my own home. Shadows flickering in the corners of rooms where no light should bend. Whispers in the silence just before sleep. And then the dreams started. The mansion, the family, the woman, the little girl. Every night they come to me. Sometimes I wake up screaming, drenched in sweat. Sometimes I wake up with scratches down my arms, as though the hands from that cursed house have followed me out. The worst part? The portraits? I don't own any, but somehow I see them. Reflections in windows, faces in photographs, even in the darkened glass of my phone screen. Staring, smiling, waiting. And every time, the little girl is closer. Last night I woke to find her standing at the foot of my bed, just watching. I escaped the mansion, but I'll never be free. Because once you enter that place, it doesn't let you go. Not truly. And now, it lives inside me. Forever. Trapped between reality and nightmare, I don't remember running. But suddenly, I was moving, stumbling, tripping, slamming into walls, anything to get away from that portrait hallway. My flashlight beam jittered wildly, painting frantic streaks of light across the peeling wallpaper. Every corner I turned, I expected Hertha little girl to be standing there, watching, waiting. But the hallway never seemed to end. I swear, I had been moving for minutes, yet I kept seeing the same cracked walls, the same rotten floorboards, the same doors. It was as if the mansion was shifting around me, bending reality itself, trapping me in a loop. My breaths came shallow and ragged. My chest burned. My mind screamed at me, "You're not supposed to be here. You were never supposed to come here." I forced myself to stop, pressing my back against the wall, clutching the flashlight to my chest like a lifeline. The silence pressed in again, heavier than ever, suffocating, and then I heard it. The sound of a lullaby, soft, sweet, almost gentle. But it didn't comfort MIT, chilled me to my core. The melody echoed through the halls, warped and distorted, like it was being sung underwater. I followed the sound, though every step felt like walking deeper into a nightmare. My legs moved on their own, as though something unseen was pulling me closer. Finally, I reached a door at the end of the corridor. The lullaby grew louder, clearer. My hand trembled as I pushed it open. Inside was a child's room. The walls were painted a faded pastel, peeling to reveal rot beneath. A broken rocking horse sat in the corner. A cradle lay tipped on its side, one leg splintered. Dolls, headless, eyeless, broken, were scattered across the floor like discarded bodies. And in the center of the room stood the little girl. Her back was to me. Her head tilted to one side. She was humming that same lullaby. Every instinct screamed for me to run, but my body betrayed me. I couldn't move, couldn't even breathe. My flashlight beam trembled over her small frame. Slowly, she turned. Her eyes locked onto mine, dark pits, glowing faintly, pulling me in like black holes. Her mouth stretched into a smile far too wide for her face. And then, she wasn't a little girl anymore. Her form warped, shifting in front of me. Her limbs lengthened unnaturally, her neck twisted with a sickening crack. Her skin grew pale as parchment, her smile splitting wider, jagged teeth glistening. I stumbled backward, nearly tripping over the cradle. My vision blurred, the edges of the room bending and distorting. I didn't know if I was awake or dreaming, alive or already dead. Because the mansion wasn't just showing me ghosts anymore, it was dragging me into its nightmare. The girl's voice pierced the air, shrill and layered, like dozens of voices speaking at once. "You can't leave. You're one of us now." The dolls on the floor began to twitch. One by one, their tiny heads snapped toward me, eyeless sockets staring, mouths opening to emit faint childlike giggles. "No," I whispered, pressing myself against the wall. My flashlight flickered again, weaker and weaker. And then, darkness. The light went out completely. I was blind. The giggles multiplied, surrounding me, echoing in my ears. Tiny footsteps scurried across the floor. The cradle rocked on its broken leg, squealing like it was alive. And then cold hands. Dozens of them. Grabbing at my arms, my legs, my face. Small, icy fingers clawed at my skin, pulling, tugging, trying to drag me down into the darkness. I screamed, thrashing wildly, but the more I fought, the tighter their grip became. My voice echoed unnaturally in the room, bouncing back distorted, as if the house itself was mocking me. Just when I thought I would be swallowed whole, my flashlight flickered back to life, and everything was gone. The hands, the girl, the dolls, the sounds. I was alone, but I knew it wasn't over, not even close, because the line between reality and nightmare had already blurred. And in this house, I couldn't tell which side I was trapped on. The spirit that wanted me to stay forever, I staggered out of that room, my chest heaving, my legs shaking so violently I could barely stand. My flashlight flickered weakly, the beam barely cutting through the suffocating dark. Every instinct told me to run, to find the staircase and escape this nightmare. But the mansion wasn't going to let me go so easily. The hallway twisted again, stretching into impossible lengths.
Ow.
Doors appeared where I swore there hadn't been any before. Each one whispered as I passed, low murmurs I couldn't quite make out, like voices calling from behind the walls. I pressed on, praying for an exit, but instead I found another room. This one was different. It wasn't decayed like the rest of the house. The air inside was warmer, heavier, and the smell of rot was replaced with something sickly sweet, like flowers left along in stagnant water. And in the center of the room stood a figure. Not the little girl, a woman. Her back was to me, her long black hair flowing down in tangled strands. She wore what looked like a faded gown, its hem dragging across the floor as if soaked in something dark. My throat went dry, my hand tightening on the flashlight, though I barely dared to lift it toward her. "Hello," I whispered, though I regretted it instantly. The figure stilled, slowly. Impossibly slowly. She turned her head, not her body, just her head until her face was visible. And I wished I had never seen it. Her skin was pale, stretched too tight, her eyes sunken but glowing faintly in the dark. Her lips curved into a smile that was both inviting and horrifying at once. "You came," she said, her voice soft, melodic, but layered with something rotten underneath. I couldn't answer. I could barely breathe. She glided toward me, her movements smooth and unnatural, like she wasn't walking but floating. My legs refused to move. My body was frozen in place as she stopped only inches away. Her hand rose cold, impossibly cold, as she brushed her fingers against my cheek. The chill sank into my skin, through my flesh, straight to my bones. "I've waited so long," she whispered. "Someone who would stay." My voice cracked. When I finally managed to speak, I don't belong here. Her smile widened. "But you do. You entered this house, and now it owns you." I stumbled back, shaking my head. "No. I'm leaving. I don't care what this place is, I'm leaving." Her expression darkened, the sweetness draining from her face. Her eyes narrowed, and the room seemed to pulse with her anger. "I no one leaves." The words weren't just spoken, they were screamed inside my head, reverberating through my skull. My vision blurred, and for a moment I thought I was going to black out. When my sight cleared, I realized the room had changed. The walls were bleeding. Thick, black ooze dripped down from the ceiling, pooling around my shoes. A sweet smell turned rancid, gagging me, and the woman. She wasn't a woman anymore. Her face stretched, her mouth tearing open wider than humanly possible, revealing jagged, endless rows of teeth. Her gown writhed, alive, crawling with shadowy hands that reached out, grasping, clawing. She shrieked, a sound so piercing it felt like my eardrums would burst. "Stay with me, forever." The hand shot out from her gown, wrapping around my wrists, my legs, pulling me toward her. I screamed, thrashing, fighting with every ounce of strength left in me. My flashlight slipped from my grasp, clattering to the floor, its beams spinning wildly across the walls. In that chaotic light, I saw them, the family from the portraits. The father, the mother, the children, all standing in the corners of the room, pale and lifeless, their hollow eyes fixed on me. They weren't ghosts, they were hers, souls she had trapped. And I was next. Summoning strength I didn't know I had, I ripped free from her grasp and dove for the flashlight. My fingers closed around it, and without thinking, I aimed the beam directly at her face. She shrieked again, recoiling, her form writhing in the light. The hands dissolved into smoke, the room flickering between nightmare and reality. I didn't wait to see what would happen next. I bolted through the door, sprinting down the hall, my only thought burning in my mind. Find a way out. But deep inside, I already knew. The mansion wasn't going to let me go, not without a fight. Escaping the mansion, but never truly free, I tore through the hallways, my flashlight beam bouncing wildly, my breath ragged and shallow. The house seemed alive around me, walls stretching, corridors twisting, doors slamming shut just as I reached them. No matter where I turned, the mansion fought to keep me inside. Behind me, I heard her, the woman, the spirit. Her shrieks echoed through the halls, shaking the very walls. Sometimes it was her voice, sharp and piercing. Other times it was the little girl's laugh, soft and mocking. The sound chased me, wrapped around me, filling every corner of my skull. Stay.
I stay.
I stumbled down the staircase, nearly tripping as the wood groaned beneath me. My flashlight flickered, but I didn't care anymore. I just needed to get out. At the bottom, I saw it. The front door. The way out. My heart surged with hope. I sprinted toward it, every muscle screaming. My fingers brushed the handle, and I yanked it with everything I had. It didn't move. I pulled harder, slamming my shoulder into the wood. The door rattled, but held firm as though nailed shut from the outside. No, I screamed, pounding on it. My fists thudded against the wood, desperate, frantic. Let me out. The house answered. The chandelier above the hall swayed violently, its rusted chain creaking. Dust poured down, and the portraits along the walls trembled, as though something inside them was trying to break free. I turned back, and there she was. The spirit stood at the base of the staircase, her gown dragging across the floor, her mouth twisted into a grotesque grin. Her voice slithered into the air, soft and certain. You belong to me now. The shadows around her stretched, long fingers crawling across the walls and ceiling, reaching for me. In that moment, I did the only thing I could think of. I dropped to my knees, shoved my flashlight under the door, and aimed it outward. For a split second, a crack of light broke through. Moonlight. Real moonlight. I pressed my face against the gap, the cold air rushing in, sharp and fresh, cutting through the suffocating stench of the house. That glimpse of the outside world ignited something in me, strength I didn't know I still had. With a primal scream, I slammed my entire body into the door. Once, twice. The wood groaned, splintering. On the third hit, the door burst open, throwing me out onto the front steps. I landed hard, scraping my hands and knees, but I didn't care. I was out. I staggered to my feet, sprinting across the overgrown yard, past the iron gate, into the cool night air. The mansion loomed behind me, its windows glowing faintly, like 100 eyes watching me flee. I didn't stop running until I reached the main road. Only then did I collapse, gasping, my whole body trembling. My phone buzzed and my pocket was nearly dawn. Somehow, the night had passed. I told myself it was over, that I had escaped. But I was wrong, because ever since that night, I haven't been the same. At first, it was little things, the feeling of being watched even in my own home. Shadows flickering in the corners of rooms where no light should bend. Whispers in the silence, just before sleep. And then, the dreams started. The mansion, the family, the woman, the little girl. Every night they come to me. Sometimes I wake up screaming, drenched in sweat. Sometimes I wake up with scratches down my arms, as though the hands from that cursed house have followed me out. The worst part? The portraits? I don't own any, but somehow I see them. Reflections in windows, faces in photographs, even in the darkened glass of my phone screen. Staring, smiling, waiting. And every time, the little girl is closer. Last night I woke to find her standing at the foot of my bed, just watching. I escaped the mansion, but I'll never be free. Because once you enter that place, it doesn't let you go. Not truly. And now, it lives inside me. Forever.